One of my favorite discoveries when I really began to dig deeper into the world of prog metal was Brazilian band Jack the Joker, and the song that brought me to them is called Brutal Behavior. Now, that was almost 6 years ago, and the album from which that song came was released in 2016. I'm going to be honest here, I had almost given up hope on ever hearing anything from them again. Well, but then a couple singles came out a couple years ago, then silence. And I thought, well, I don't know, maybe that's it. Finally, Jack the Joker have released their latest opus entitled The Devil to Pay in the Backlands. So, after a 9-year wait, I know the first question out of anybody's mouth is really going to be, is it worth the wait? Well, I am here to say definitively, yes. My detailed thoughts coming right up. Hey, Prognoggins, Dave here. This is Bleeding Edge, back with an album review after a couple interviews. So the album we're featuring this week, Jack the Joker, The Devil to Pay in the Backlands. Kind of a big deal. It's been a while since we heard from them, and this is no small potatoes of an album. In the intervening 9 years, the band lineup hasn't changed all that much. On vocals, you have Rafael Joer. I'm going to try and not mangle all these Brazilian names, and I'm going to fail. I'm just saying it right now. So Rafael Joer. On electric and acoustic guitars, there is Felipe Facao and Lucas Colares. Bass is Gustavo Pinheiro, and drums and percussion Vicente Ferreira. And all of it is produced by Adair Dalfenbach, a decidedly not Brazilian name. Sounds German, but okay. Could be Adair. I shouldn't even try it anymore. Adair Dalfenbach. If I mangled it, I apologize, as always. I don't know who the guests were. I know there were. I have not had success locating a complete credits list. There definitely are a lot of different instruments besides the ones I just listed showing up on this album. And there are plenty of very lovely female backing vocals. I don't know who provided them. Hopefully somebody out there does. Meanwhile, we have an album that is 11 songs, 1 hour, 7 minutes long. Gotta tell you, the latter part of the year has really been breaking out of that 40 to 45 minute trend we were seeing for most of the first half of the year with some very hefty album runtimes. It's very cool. Second one in a row I'm reviewing that ran more than an hour. I like it. The album is based on the Brazilian novel of the same title, which, if you don't know, is considered to be one of the greatest Portuguese novels of all time and one of the top novels of all time in any language, period. I never heard of it before. I have to be perfectly honest. I can't say that I am a connoisseur of top novels of all time. I tend to lean towards more, we'll call it esoteric. Some might call it escapist fare. So I'm not familiar with the album, but from what I've read about it and learned about it, this is quite a heady undertaking on the part of the band to pick this one up. No small potatoes, which is the second time I have now used that particular phrase in this review. I'm going to stop now. So anyway, and before we get into that, before I do the breakdown, I just want to take a brief moment, say don't forget to like and subscribe, help Bleeding Edge grow. We're looking to try and reach up towards 1,000, hopefully before the year is over. We're going there very slowly. And a review of my methodology. I rate every album on 4 categories: intellectual, innovative, technical, and emotional. Give them all a score of 1 to 5. Average those scores out. Get a raw score. And if, the raw score doesn't quite match my experience of the album, I might add or subtract what I call the personal modifier to get our final score. So, getting into the breakdown, we start with, as always, intellectual. So, taking on a novel, really taking on any classic piece of literature, takes some guts, and especially one of this level of importance and reverence Yes, no, I hadn't heard of it before. I'm not a connoisseur of classic literature. I've never read Hemingway, unless I was forced to, and even then I didn't read any more than I had to. It's what they got Cliff Notes for, right? Well, like I said, can't say I've read it, but I have read about it. I have read the plot summary. And from what I'm reading in the lyrics, they do it justice. They aren't keeping straight to a what I call a linear story, but they are staying true to the themes of conflict and survival and human relationships and all that stuff that makes a classic piece of literature. So I think, really honestly, sticking to the themes more so than necessarily following the story per se, freed them up a bit. That's my opinion. It seems to me in that sense that allowed them to not get stuck having to go through a certain progression of events, although I don't know that they deviated from it massively, but to a large degree, it left them free to compose the songs, I think, as they wanted to. I kind of think it could have gotten more than a little bit unwieldy, but thankfully their reach did not exceed their grasp. They did it justice. Though I can't say I know that they necessarily added new insights to the story or the novel. No droplets of wisdom or anything like that that I picked up on. Maybe I missed them. Don't know my classic literature, so maybe I don't know classic lyrics as well as I could. But anyway, good solid outing on this part, staying true to the intellectual and emotional themes of the novel, rather, and doing them justice within the album. I give it a 4. Next, we move on to Innovative. Now, the band comes back to this one with the same powerful prog metal that they established in their first 2 albums. What I'd say maybe they did this time around is, one, I kind of feel like they brought a greater sense of melody overall. Not that the stuff that they had before was necessarily lacking melody, but I feel like this one brought some memorable passages, some hooks, you might say. Not quite pop hooks, but 1 or 2 there probably approaches that level. And just an overall, I think, more solid sense of composition in terms of crafting melodic, memorable tunes. I think they just grew a bit. That's I think really for me the theme of this album, growth, especially on their third album. What they also did was blended in nicely various Brazilian instruments and styles, and it really to me helped create a unique sound. I think it helped really enhance the sense of a story told in Brazil by Brazilians. And I think that link to their home country does a lot to make this a rather unique and unusual experience, and I like that. And overall, I think compositionally, songwriting wise, they're a bit more focused, a bit more concise than they've been on previous outings. Perhaps they a little more disciplined, a little more restrained, maybe. Though still, I mean, really complex, weighty, heavy, very heavy music. And I think to a large degree, this is the kind of album that benefits from benefits from repeated listening. It's not necessarily one that grabs you immediately, but I don't know. There's a lot to impress on the first listen. This is not what I would call a tectonic shift for them. More of a gradual growth, more of a maturing of the band, and them maybe being most comfortable that I've heard them as songwriters and composers, and as far as putting this album together. There's a real sense of cohesion to it that I like. I'm just not saying it's a huge jump, so I'm going to score this section a 3.5. Meanwhile, we move on to technical. Holy smokes. If you didn't already know, these guys are mind-blowing overall as instrumentalists, and they brought their A game this time around. The music is propulsive, sometimes chaotic on a level with like Between the Buried and Me, very energetic, and often running at warp speed through much of the album. This one is a bit of a gasser keeping up with it, and the guys that pull this off have got some serious chops. Now, by the midsection of the album, We do get some quieter passages, and by that point, it's almost a relief after feeling so much like you're going full speed ahead in the opening songs of the album. But it's very welcome. It's very cool. The soloing is tight and inventive and highly technical. Like, I'm talking Petrucci levels of technicality on display throughout much of this album. And we even get bass solos. Now, that's something you don't get a lot of. It's a nice change from the standard. It's nice to put the bass front and center, though in many ways, honestly, almost unnecessary. The bass is often one of the most prominent parts of the music. Their sound is really driven by the bass, both driving the tempo, of course, but also creating a lot of the spine, a lot of feel of the music. It is really part of their unique sound. And Pinheiro is a talent to watch. This is a guy who is seamlessly merging Flea levels of funk and punch with Chris Squire levels of dexterity. And I'm not kidding. I might be underselling him a little bit. He really brings to the party much of what Jack the Joker, what makes their unique sound, and really makes them stand out as a band. And it's not just the musicians that brought it this time around. Raphael absolutely came to impress. From crisp, clear highs to full-bodied, rafters-rattling mids to throaty jazz growls. And if you're not sure what I mean when I say a jazz growl, it's kind of like this. When most guys today are women. Oh yeah, death metal growls also. He is doing it all, and it's another prime component of what makes their unique sound. You don't hear vocalists in metal doing what Raphael is doing, and he did a great job on this one. It's some of my favorite stuff by him. So there are not a lot of bands out there that I would put at Dream Theater level of technicality. These guys are one of them. I am scoring this one a 5. And finally, we get to emotional. I'd say the emotions I experienced while listening to this album include relief that they are back, surprise at how impressive this album is and how it just suddenly dropped in my lap, and worn out, if that is an emotion. I'm not sure it is, at just how much of a hurricane this album feels like. We're talking fast-paced, energetic. This one rarely lets the pedal down. Lets up on the pedal? It's probably a better way of saying it. Rarely lets the throttle down. I don't know. Some sort of metaphor about speed. You write your own. Ultimately, though, it's the ups and the downs. It's those quieter passages that really make it a blend. I ultimately just found the album to be a very enjoyable ride. Not necessarily one that I think especially touched me emotionally beyond a lot of enjoyment. I probably might score it a little bit slightly above the average because I was so happy to get to hear more from these guys. So I'm going to score this one a 3.5. So we put that all together. We've got intellectual 4, innovative 3.5, technical a solid 5, emotional 3.5. That gives us a raw score of 4. Now, adding some additional thoughts, as always. These guys are criminally overlooked, if you ask me. They do not get the attention they deserve. I'm sure a 9-year hiatus and a band from a place that you don't normally associate with progressive rock or metal probably contributes to that. This album, though, really to me represents them showing wonderful growth and maturity as artists and performers, and I hope it gets them a lot of deserved attention. If you haven't checked these guys out, I do recommend you go find them. And I'm not kidding when I say they bring top-notch musicality to this album. I found myself being impressed all throughout the album with the guitars and the bass and the drums and Raphael's vocals. There's so much to love here. If you really love virtuosic music, virtuoso performances, this is an album that's going to appeal to you. And I gotta say, the blend of regional styles of their Brazilian home are folded in very seamlessly. It's not like it's chopped in or feels tacked on at any point in time. It is blended in. It is part of the music. There's maybe one part in the whole album where something stands out apart from their overall sound, but it's blended in there. It adds spice. It adds flavor to what they'd already done and puts just the right unique twist on their brand of prog metal. And you know how much I love unique sound, and these guys have it in spades, from the music to Raphael's vocal diversity, all of it there. This is, admittedly, a complex and diverse and a dense album, and I think ultimately it does require multiple listens to grab a person fully. But honestly, at the very beginning, the metallic bombast and the style that these guys put forward and the passion they have gets you from the start. That's what brings you in, and as the layers that reveal themselves over time, that's what keeps the listener interested and engaged. At least it did for me. That's all I got to say. Standout songs, looking at it, we're talking about Between the Skies, possibly my favorite vocal performance from Raphael in this one. He gets a lot of vocal variety in there. The emotional highs that are part of the chorus perfectly express probably what is the best hook on the album, and that is in addition highlighted by these excellent backing vocals that just make the whole thing really sweet. Neblina features the first quiet passage, really, of the album as its opening. It highlights some really tasty, restrained soloing on guitar, and then that's punctuated by Pinheiro's insistent and powerful bass lines. And gradually it builds to a full-on metal assault. It's wonderful. And then finally, Hope, the epic closer, does all the stuff that I personally want an epic prog metal song to do. It's mysterious. It's got a plaintive slow build, alternating between heavy riffs and atmospheric passages, tasty noodling on guitar, and a climactic crescendo. What more could you ask for? Really. So, in the end, I have to say that this one really earns that raw score solidly. But I think for me, I need to move it up ever so slightly. So I'm adding a positive 0.25, which makes the final score 4.25, which means I probably have had the best two back-to-back albums that I have reviewed this year. So meanwhile, where are the Jack the Joker fans out there? What do you folks think? What do you folks think? Anyone out there just now discovering these guys, just jumping on board? What pulled you in? What kept you? Curious to hear. Leave your thoughts in the comments, and while you're doing that, do that thing if you could. You know what I mean. You know what I mean. Finally, I leave you as always with a reminder to never fear to deviate from the norm, and of course, keep it prog.